This is the second video that I'm doing analysing the examples of book reviews for popular fiction, and this time we're having a look at the New York Review of Books, or New York Book Review example, which is by Deborah Eisenberg, and it's a review of a book by Magda Szabo, and it's a translated book. And this one's very different from the Australian book review example. So there's another video which analyses that. This book review is over 2,000 words long, and that's twice as long as the amount that you've got. And so there's a couple of things that are done in this book review that you're probably not going to have the words to do. Well, definitely not have the words to do. For a start, if we have a look at this, there's quite a few very long quotes in it. So the indented bits are quotes from the novel, and whereas the Australian Book Review example used small quotes, part sentences, integrated into the review text, this one uses very large quotes. So you're not going to have enough words to do that. But perhaps more significantly, there's a great difference in style in this review of books, this book review, and it's a review of a book that's literary fiction, and the review itself is very literary. So, for example, if I can pull out a few sentences that illustrate that. One has the sensation that through the medium of her fictional narrator, Szabo herself is whispering fiercely into our ear, asking our understanding and assistance as she attempts to resolve a punishing anxiety, a sensation that is explosively intensified when, toward the end of the book, a central character addresses the previously unnamed writer as Magdushka. Only my parents had ever called me that. No one else. So this itself is quite literary writing. It's not, just everyday journalism. Having said that, let's have a look at how it's actually structured. So the first paragraph is not really telling us what's going to be argued. It starts out with a fair bit about the author and how she wrote. It tells us something important in that being in Hungary during political upheaval, there was a time when she and her writer husband were not allowed to publish, and this actually turns out to be quite central to the plot of the novel. And the reviewer actually tells us that the novel, in a funny way, is autobiographical, even though it is a work of fiction. So after that basic introduction, which is meant to draw us as readers in, so it's not a thesis statement by any means, it's just something to intrigue us and pique our interest so that we'll read further. Then after that second paragraph, where she's still talking about the author and the autobiographical nature, she talks a bit about plot here, but at the same time as she's talking about plot, she's talking about character. And I would argue from my reading of this that really this is almost the only section where she focuses a lot on plot. In the next part of it, she actually says that she can't say any more about the plot without giving it away, and we'll come to that in a minute. Now, if we think about one of the differences between literary fiction and genre fiction plot is incredibly important. Remember, we talked about what Umberto Eco said about James Bond novels, and in yesterday's lecture on romance, we talked about various analysts' identification of the things that are always in a romance plot. But literary fiction is usually quite different. It's often very character driven. So this review is very much about character. It's very literary, as I said. And this might differ from your review. So if you're modelling your review on this New York Book Review, you may focus more on plot, but the style you've got to get is this more literary style. Anyway, back to the analysis. So she's talking about plot, she's starting to mix it in with character, and when we get to here, she says, I can't tell you any more about the plot of the book. So if we look at that, that's about a quarter of the way into the review, and she says she can't say any more about plot. And as I said, that's because she's reviewing literary fiction. You'll be able to say a lot more about plot. And then I'm just looking at my notes. So then she's back into looking at character, and she does an enormously detailed analysis of the character of Emerence, who's hired to do the housework, and of the writer. So the central character is the writer. And as you read this review, it's easy to get mixed up between whether the reviewer is talking about Szabo, the author, or the central character, the writer. And whenever she says the writer, she's talking about that central character. When we get down to the narrator's tone, which is here, so here she's talking about style, so a little bit about plot, a lot about character, and then something about style. Again, this little bit is about plot, and as with the Australian Book Review example, the last paragraph is really wrapping it up for us and very, very briefly summarising what the reviewer feels as the main points of the review. We are all traders, not traders, just too many things to do. And the door is like an enigmatic object with a seemingly simple shape that calls up a wealth of associations, and so on. So a more complex structure to this review than the Australian Book Review one, but this is one where you can sort of really let your literary writing itself go when you review the book.